All right, we're about to dive into one of the most counterintuitive corners of human psychology. We're going to talk about how an emotion we usually connect with pain and fear and betrayal can, for some people, become a source of intense erotic charge. So here's the big question we're tackling today. Can pain actually be pleasure? Specifically, can that psychological sting of jealousy get flipped into a powerful turn-on? It sounds like a total contradiction, right? But the answer tells us something absolutely fascinating about how our brains are wired. And we're going to explore this whole paradox through the lens of a specific interest, cuckolding. Now, the goal here isn't to ask why someone would be into this, but to really understand the psychological mechanics that can take a normally negative emotion and turn it into a source of intense desire. So how is this even possible? Well, it all starts deep inside the brain with this strange phenomenon where our most intense emotional signals can really get their wires crossed. It really comes down to this concept called arousal transfer. Think about it like this. Your body has a really similar physical reaction to fear, excitement, and sexual arousal, right? Your heart is racing, adrenaline's pumping. The physical stuff is almost identical. The feeling you have, what you call it, depends entirely on the label your brain decides to stick on that feeling. There's a classic study that just illustrates this perfectly. It's called the shaky bridge experiment. You have these men who meet a woman on a really dangerous, scary, wobbly bridge. Well, they were way more likely to feel attracted to her than the guys who met her on a totally stable, safe bridge. Their brains literally took the arousal caused by fear and just mislabeled it as intense attraction. And that right there is the crucial point. The brain feels the raw intensity first, and only then does it look around and decide what that intensity means. Is it fear or is it excitement? In the right context, that line between the two can get incredibly blurry. Okay, so this leads us to another really key idea, emotional masochism. Now, we're not talking about physical pain here. This is all about finding the intensity of psychological discomfort, feelings like anxiety or jealousy, to be erotically charged. The best analogy is eating a super hot chili pepper. It's genuinely uncomfortable, right? It might even hurt a little. But that rush of endorphins and just the sheer intensity of the experience, that's exactly what makes it so pleasurable for some people. Emotional masochism kind of works the same way. That psychological sting is actually part of the thrill. But hold on, it's not just about brain chemistry. For this kind of rewiring to even happen, the specific emotional landscape of the whole situation is absolutely critical. And this is where we see the massive difference between real pain and play. And we have to be super clear about this, because it is the most important distinction of all. This dynamic is nothing like actual infidelity. Cheating is all about deceit and betrayal and broken trust. This, on the other hand, is built on a foundation of total consent, open communication, and very clear negotiated boundaries. One is a betrayal, the other is a form of play. At its core is this idea of voluntary vulnerability. Think of it like a trust fall, but with incredibly high emotional stakes. By choosing to put yourself in a situation that feels emotionally risky, you are performing this radical act of trust that can, paradoxically, make the bond with your partner even stronger. And then, just to make things even more interesting, sometimes a completely different emotion shows up: compersion. This is a term that comes from the world of polyamory, and it's basically the opposite of jealousy. It's the genuine happiness you feel when you see your partner happy, even if there was someone else. But here's where it gets really wild. These feelings aren't mutually exclusive. It's not just jealousy or compersion. It's often an emotional cocktail. The anxiety, the jealousy, the compersion, and the arousal can all exist at the exact same time, just swirling together and amplifying each other into this uniquely intense experience. And the story doesn't even end with the scene itself. There's this powerful emotional arc that people talk about called the reclamation dynamic. You start from a place of security, you move through that vulnerability and arousal, and then it all culminates in this period of reconnection that many couples say is just extraordinarily intimate. It actually reaffirms the primary bond. Okay, so let's pull the camera back a bit. This isn't just about individual psychology. There are these bigger evolutionary and social forces at play that can add to the intensity of it all. So One evolutionary theory points to something called sperm competition. Now, the idea is that a potential threat to paternity can trigger this deep biological response, increased arousal and desire for a primary partner. So in a consensual context like this one, that ancient survival mechanism is basically being hijacked for modern erotic fun. You've also got the Coolidge effect in the mix. That's the scientific term for our brain's powerful positive response to sexual novelty. This whole dynamic can be a way to tap into that drive for newness, introducing a ton of excitement into a long-term relationship, all while the primary emotional bond stays completely secure. And finally, there's one last fascinating psychological state at play here. It's called cognitive dissonance. This is the mental tension we feel when we hold two completely contradictory ideas in our head at the very same time. So in this scenario, the brain is grappling with these two opposing thoughts all at once. This is threatening to my relationship, and this is incredibly exciting. That unresolved tension, that mental friction, that can become a powerful source of arousal all by itself. The paradox is the whole point. And this really highlights the ultimate paradox of it all. A dynamic that looks, from the outside, like it's threatening a relationship can only be arousing if it's built on an absolute foundation of rock-solid trust. Without that deep sense of security, the fear would just be, well, fear. The trust is what allows it to become a thrill. So what's the big takeaway from all this? I think it's the incredible, almost unbelievable flexibility of the human brain. It has this capacity to take almost any intense emotional experience, fear, anxiety, vulnerability, even jealousy, and in the right context of safety and trust, totally transform it into erotic charge. Which kind of leaves us with one final big question to chew on. If our brains can perform this kind of psychological alchemy, turning the lead of jealousy into the gold of desire, what other emotions that we think of as polar opposites are actually far more connected than we realize?